Let's now learn about common financial concepts of cloud procurement. CapEx refers to business expenses that are experienced to create long-term benefits in the future. This includes expenses like purchasing fixed assets like systems, servers, printers, scanners, etc. CapEx consists of the following processes: purchase of fixed assets, preparation of the purchased asset as per the business use, fixing of assets problems, upgradation of the asset, adapting a machine to a different use. Now that you have understood a bit about capital expenditure, let us see the workflow for the same. The workflow is a generalized process of defining the capital expenditure irrespective of cloud computing or in general. First, request creation takes place. Then, either the request is approved or rejected. Once the request is approved, the accounting takes place. Post-accounting, the request is in by CFO, post which the request clarification is performed. The diagram also shows how adding price takes place to post-request approval initiation, and again, the request is then approved. Let us consider this workflow as an example of cloud computing. Consider a long-term expense, for example, moving from on-premise to cloud. You will first raise a request for the same. Post the request approval, you will do the accounting of it. Here, accounting refers to an accounting of the expense that would be required for the scenario. Once the accounting is done, you will verify the clarification in terms of its feasibility to do this migration on a long-term basis in terms of cost. If yes, then the request is sent to CFO and post-approval, the request is processed. Now that you have understood capital expenditure, let us understand operating expenditure as well. Operating expenditure or OpEx is defined as the operating costs that are required to run the day-to-day business, like services and consumable items. This includes services like website hosting or domain registrations. These things are necessary for the success of the business but are not considered major long-term investments like CapEx items. Now that you have understood the concept of operating expenditure, let us see the workflow for the same. The workflow is a generalized process of defining the operating expenditure irrespective of it is for cloud computing or in general. First, the purchase request is initiated. Then the purchase request is under consideration. Then, request clarification takes place, post which the request is verified and a purchase order is created. Then the purchase order is verified and the super selection takes place. After all this, the supply is processed and the invoice is raised. Now let us take a scenario for cloud computing. Let us say you raise a request for a virtual machine on the Google Cloud platform. You enter all the required information, post which the requirement or request is verified and the virtual machine is provided to you. Please note, basis the usage of your day-to-day activities, the invoice is raised. It is quite difficult to make a direct comparison between the traditional CapEx model most IT organizations use for hardware and the OpEx model of paying for virtual machines on an hourly basis. However, there are some benefits that can be included into an ROI estimate for Google Cloud services, like elimination of on-premises data center power, reduction of physical plant expenses, reduction of maintenance and utility service licensing. Apart from these, there are a few components that can be considered to differentiate between CapEx and OpEx. These are approval process, upfront cost, supporting infrastructure, IT operations management and costs, forecasting, corporate policy. The total cost of ownership in cloud computing is defined as the total cost of adopting, operating, and provisioning cloud infrastructure. Organizations must perform a Cloud TCO analysis when they are planning to move to the cloud because it allows them to weigh the cost of cloud adoption against the cost of running their current on-premise systems. Since TCO is used to understand the lifetime cost and value of static or contained resources, However, estimating the TCO of cloud infrastructure, an inherently dynamic ecosystem, can be challenging. When the organizations calculate the cloud TCO, they often do an apple-to-apple comparison of the cost of running an on-premise system versus the cost of running the same system in the cloud. That is, comparing the initial purchase price of hardware and software in an on-premise environment to the monthly subscription cost of cloud computing. To accurately calculate cloud TCO, you must capture not only the purchase price of on-premises versus cloud solutions, but also the intangible costs associated with either solution. Let's see some steps that you must follow while estimating cloud total cost of ownership. Calculate the current IT infrastructure costs. It is important to understand the actual cost of your current IT solution as a first step. This includes calculating the direct and indirect costs of running and maintaining the current system, as well as estimating the current workloads. The workload includes the servers, databases, storage, and network bandwidth. Estimate the cost of a cloud solution. Here, you must be calculating the cost of operating the applications in the cloud. Please note that the cost areas considered for the on-premises infrastructure may not be applied in the cloud because they will be offloaded to the cloud service provider. Consider the intangible benefits of the cloud. Beyond comparing the monetary implications of on-premise versus cloud solutions, there are opportunity costs associated with not switching to the cloud. You need to quantify what this means for your business. Below are a few factors that must be kept in mind while comparing the on-premise TCO to the cloud TCO. Cloud migration is not only about cost saving. Often, the result is a larger ROI and better business outcomes, not lower TCO, even though it could be both. It is necessary to analyze the comparison of the business value and the cost of migrating to the cloud versus using an on-premises model. It is important to identify the cost savings and efficiencies while performing a cloud TCO analysis.
For more details, check the link in the description. Learn with Whizlabs. Success certified.